Amos 1, and we'll start in verse 3. This will be part 2 of whatever we started this morning. What was that? Benhadad. These are Benhadad and all the bad dads. Amos 1, verse 3. Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Damascus, and for 4, I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they have threshed Gilead with threshing instruments of iron. But I will send a fire into the house of Hazael, which shall devour the palaces of Benhadad. I will break also the bar of Damascus, and cut off the inhabitant of the plain of Avim, and him that holdeth the scepter from the house of Eden. And the people of Syria shall go into captivity unto Kir, saith the Lord. Okay, so we saw this morning that there's 3 Benhadads, and there's 1 Hazael. So we'll just take the 3 Benhadads. I don't have time to do all of them. I don't even know if we can cover all 3, but we'll try it. And you can find Hazael on your own and see what you learn from that. But we'll just cover the Benhadads tonight. The first one shows up in 1 Kings chapter 15. 1 Kings chapter 15. We'll find the problem I see with him is this. He's a resource for a rebel. Don't go become an ear for a rebel. Somebody who's wicked, you don't want to be their source of unloading. Just like we were talking tonight. I don't want to hear all the business. Keep your own trash in your own trash can. Don't unload it on me. 1 Kings 15, verse 17. And Baasha, king of Israel, went up against Judah and built Ramah. Well, let's see. I've got it right here. Let's see where my pronunciation is. Ramah. Okay. I never can pronounce these things right, and who knows if that's right anyway. That he might not suffer any to go out or come in to Asa, king of Judah. So you understand what's going on here. The northern king says, I don't want anybody slipping over the border into the southern kingdom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build up a city that's going to be a fortress that's going to block them. And so verse 18. Then Asa, where's Asa, north or south? South. Asa took all the silver and the gold that were left in the treasury house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house, and delivered them unto the hand of his servants. And King Asa sent them to Benhadad, the son of Tabrimon, the son of Hezon, king of Syria, that dwelt at Damascus. Okay, you see what's going on now? The king in the south does not like the move the king in the north made. Now you have to understand this. It looks like they're 2 separate kingdoms, but they're brothers. They're the same. It'd be the same as if the South had won the Civil War, and there was a divide between the North and the South. And part of my family lives up north, and part of it lives down south, but there's this division of country. That's what's going on in Israel. They're actually related, but they've decided 10 tribes are going to stay up here, 2 tribes are going to stay down here, and it's like what happened in Germany, east and west. We're going to put up a wall, and you can't get over here, and you can't. That's what's going on here. Well, the king in the south says, I don't like this. I'm going to put an end to it. I'm going to fix this problem. But the way he chooses to fix it is a bad problem. He goes to Benhadad in Syria and pays him to come be a mercenary. He says, I'm going to give you some gold and some silver, and then we'll strike a deal, and then you can come down here and fix this problem with me. Wait a minute, that's a domestic dispute. Stay out of it. But he didn't stay out of it. He got involved in a mess where he didn't belong. He should have just stayed out. Verse 19. He sent him this money, so now he says, there's a league between me and thee, and between my father and thy father. Behold, I have sent unto thee a present. Well, that's a nice way of putting it. I'd call it a bribe, a payoff, of silver and gold. Come and break thy league with Baasha, king of Israel, that's in the north, that he may depart from me. So he wants him to come down and to be his big bodyguard, take care of these problems for him. Now he's pulled an outside source in to handle a family problem. But Benhadad should have had more sense to get involved in that. We can fall in that same trap. Don't get involved in somebody else's mess if you don't have to. Most of the time, you don't have to. Most of the time, it's best to leave it. Unless God instructs you, you're going to go give them my message. Then don't view it as you. You hold it loosely, hand them the message, and don't take it personal. But it's just human nature to try to take, God told me to tell them this, and they didn't do it. Look at Jonah. It's not. It's God's message. We just do the little part we're supposed to do, and then let go. Let them do what they want to with it. God will take care of it. The Bible has a lot to say about this. Psalms 15, verse 5. Psalms 15, verse 5. It says, "He that putteth not out his money to usury," that is, charge a exorbitant interest rate, "nor taketh reward against the innocent. He that doeth these things shall never be moved." Well, okay, Syria, not Assyria, but Syria is violating this verse right here. Now, they don't know this verse, but we do, so we don't have to be Benhadad. But here he's taking money, and he's not taking it for a good reason. And he doesn't know which side's innocent and which side's guilty, and he's not been made the arbitrator of that. But he's going to choose a side because there's a dollar bill behind it. That's a poor way to make a decision. Look at 1 Samuel 8, verse 3. 1 Samuel 8, 3. This is the people's complaint with Samuel when he's about to die. And they say, look, we don't want your boys ruling, taking your position, and here's why. "And his sons walked not in his ways, but turned aside after lucre," that is money, "and took bribes, and perverted judgments." Now, whether they did or they didn't, that tells you a fact. Bribery is a bad way to make a decision. Somebody says, okay, we've got two choices here. You make whichever one you want. If you make the right one, it's over here in the right hand, and you get an extra $1,000 for making it. But you make your own choice. Okay, now it's just colored the choice you make, doesn't it? Okay, money's not a good reason to make a decision. Jude chapter 1, verse 4. Jude 1, verse 4. Jude 1, 4. That'd be the little bitty, probably page or half a page in your Bible right before Revelation. "For there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before of old ordained to this condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of our God into lasciviousness, and denying the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ." Now, Benhadad, does he know anything about God? No, sir. He's got his own gods. He's not coming down there to convert. He doesn't want to be a proselyte Jew. He's not coming down there to learn the law of the Lord. He's coming down there, and two can't walk together except they're agreed. So Asa's got to have some sort of agreement with this guy. Even if his agreement is, he's just going to fight my battles for me, we recognize we have different gods, so on that subject we won't talk. Okay, you've just compromised. If the decision is, because you have a different God than me, I just won't talk about mine, you've compromised. They won. Not you. You lost. They're the leader now. Okay, so that's bad news. And that's the problem I see. Back at 1 Kings 15. 1 Kings 15, pick it up in verse 20. "So Benhadad hearkened unto Asa, and sent the captains of the host which he had against the cities of Israel, and smote Ijon, and Dan, and Abel Bethmaachah, and Cinneroth, with all the land of Naphtali, And it came to pass, when Baasha heard thereof, that he left off building of Ramah and dwelt in Tirzah. Okay, so it worked, or it seems like it did. The king in the north said, maybe my building plan isn't going so hot. They've got some extra firepower over there, and so I'll just cool my jets for a while. However, what it did that they didn't realize is it brought an open door into Israel for Syria. And now for the next few hundred years, it's always going to be a problem. Benhadad's, 3 of them are going to come down there, and Hazael's going to come down there, and Reason's going to come down there. They're all going to come and cause problems with Israel because they're stupid enough to open a door to them. And that door didn't have to be open. He says in Proverbs 20, verse 3. Proverbs 20, verse 3. It is an honor for a man to cease from strife. Okay, it's more honorable for you to not get all worked up about something than to win. That's anti-human nature. Human nature says, no, sir, I've got to win. That's just inbred in us. The Bible says it's more honorable to cease from strife. Just quit. If you know you're right, you just won. Who are you trying to impress? Cease from strife. But every fool will be meddling. Okay? Our man, Benhadad, if I can say his name right, Benhadad, he's a fool. He's meddling where he has no business. He has no stake in it. The other thing is, for Israel, they should have appealed to the strongest power. The strongest power was not Syria, was not that army, was not Benhadad. The strongest power was Jehovah God. And they knew it. And they knew the north recognized that. Don't you think it would have been more effective had God stopped that? Yes. Amen. And no future problems added with it. Proverbs 26, verse 17. Proverbs 26, 17. He that passeth by and meddleth with strife belonging not to him is like one that taketh a dog by the ears. Okay, well that only works if dogs are big dogs. Those little chihuahuas and those things that are just overgrown cats, those aren't real dogs. You could take one of those by the ears and not worry too much about it. But you grab a Doberman or you grab a Rottweiler by the ears, you're either pretty stupid or you're pretty brave. But he says, when you meddle with somebody's business that doesn't have anything to do with you, what you're doing is it's the same as you just go up to the biggest bulldog you can find and grab him by the ears and start yanking him around. Something's going to happen, and it's probably not going to be fun. 18. As a man who casteth firebrands, arrows, and death. Wow. So is the man that deceiveth his neighbor and saith, Am I not in sport? Now that tells you something. And this is a little off topic, but I'm going to cover it because it's right here and it's good. He tells you, just like meddling where your nose shouldn't be, don't get involved in somebody else's business when you don't have to. The same is a thin line between stepping over from joking to actually causing strife. So even your jokes, you have to be sure the other person realizes it's a joke. The second you cross the line, you got to back it up. Jesting can be very dangerous. And the normal response to that is what we see in our verse. I'm just kidding. That's not a good excuse. Oh, I didn't mean it that way. It came out wrong. I didn't mean for that to hurt you. We won't go there. Drop it. That's the same. He's equating the two together as if you were meddling where you shouldn't have been. That's the same thing Benhadad did. He started meddling where he didn't belong. Matthew 7, verse 6. Matthew 7, verse 6. He says, "Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet and turn again and rend you." That's exactly what happened. What did they give Benhadad? The treasury money right out of the temple. That was God's money. It wasn't theirs. Keep your fingers off of it. They gave that to Benhadad, a dog. You know what he ends up doing? Turning and trampling them, just like Jesus said would happen. 1 Thessalonians 4:11. 1 Thessalonians 4:11. This is a tough verse. Man, this is a tough night. Where did we get all this? Okay. 1 Thessalonians 4:11. "And that you study to be quiet." If you've got a problem running your mouth, maybe you need to learn something. Get you a history book or a science book or an algebra book or something and learn to study. It'll get your mouth closed. That's what he's saying. Study to be quiet and do your own business. Not somebody else's. Do your own business. And to work with your own hands. That's just a good thing to do. Work with your hands. Yours. As we commanded you. Okay, so Paul's been laying down some laws for these people. I don't do that, but I'll take what he says and we can pass that on. I'm not going to make up any commandments for you. But this one's already made up so we can follow it, and it's a good one to do. It would have kept Benhadad out of trouble, and it would have kept Israel out of trouble. Let's just leave everybody's business to everybody else. Hebrews 12, verse 15. Hebrews 12, verse 15. He says, "Looking diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God." He didn't say the grace of God fails. It's the man who fails. So, the grace of God is powerful, but I sure can fail. It doesn't make the grace of God a failure. It makes me a failure. Okay, so we're going to look diligently, lest any man fail of the grace of God, lest any root of bitterness springing up trouble you, and thereby many be defiled. What do you think happens when Benhadad shows up to settle a family dispute? A root of bitterness. Everybody's mad at everybody, and it's going to be a feud that lasts for hundreds of years until God puts an end to it. That's what happens when you become a resource for a rebel. Sometimes that resource is simply a, "I support you." Okay, maybe just change the subject. "I don't have an answer. I'll pray about it." You don't have to be the advisor for everybody. That's a dangerous spot to get in. Look at 1 Peter 4. 1 Peter 4, verse 15. This is good New Testament Bible practical doctrine. "But let none of you suffer as a murderer." Now, when's the last time you had to tell somebody that? You don't have to tell them that. They know they shouldn't be a murderer. Okay, so these are no-brainers, right? For a Christian, these are things that should just come natural. You shouldn't be a murderer. Let's see what the rest of the list says. "Or as a thief." Now, you don't... Yeah, some people you do need to tell that to. But really, you don't need to. They know in their own conscience it's wrong. Theft is bad. Just like murder is bad. He put them on the same playing field. "Or as an evildoer." So something that is evil. Well, duh, yeah, don't do that. "Or as a busybody in other men's matters." Wow. He said, you want to start getting involved in somebody else's affairs that really doesn't affect you and you don't have any part in the game? He said, that's the same as if you were a murderer or a thief. He put it in the same list. Wow. This is a tough book. These are God's rules. It'll keep you out of trouble. Now, I heard somebody say this the other day. It's good. No man can break God's laws. God's laws are God's laws. They cannot be broken. It's just like you can't change gravity. Many men try. Here's what happens when you try to break God's law. You are the one that breaks. His law remains the same. You can think you're going to break gravity and jump off the Empire State Building, but you won't. You'll break. His law won't. Here, he's given us a list of rules. These rules are not designed to be stern and harsh on us. It's designed to keep us out of trouble. Benhadad didn't have them. He got in trouble. Israel had them and didn't use them, and they got in trouble. Let's see the next Benhadad. He's in 1 Kings 20. Benhadad number 2. So the first Benhadad we saw was a resource for a rebel. This one I just say is greedy of gain. 1 Kings 20, verse 1. 1 Kings 20, verse 1. It says, And Benhadad, the king of Syria, gathered all his hosts together, and there were 32 kings with him, and horses and chariots. And he went up and besieged Samaria and warred against it. And he sent messengers to, who's the king now? Ahab. Is Ahab in the north or the south? North. Where's Samaria? Is Samaria north or south of Jerusalem? I must needs go through Samaria. The Samaritans were half-breeds, so that's not Israel proper. Okay, so Samaria is up here. I don't see it on the map, but it should be about right here. Yeah, Samaria, right here. And Jerusalem is right here. So that's in the south. That's basically the border of the southern kingdom from here down. And from here up is the northern kingdom. Samaria for a long time was the capital for the north. So Samaria, he goes up to Samaria. This is dealing with the north. The last time we had a problem with Benhadad was in the south. Remember, he was buddies with the south. Here we go, verse 2. And he sent messengers to Ahab, king of Israel, unto the city, and said unto him, Thus saith Benhadad. Well, we're really excited about what he's got to say. Thy silver and thy gold is mine. Wait a minute. Didn't they just give them the silver and gold from the south? Now all of a sudden, well, it's the same kingdom. It's a different king, but the same kingdom. Now the north says, we got everything out of the south. Let's go see what we can get from the north. And they do it. See what happens. Where did I stop? Verse 3. Thy silver and thy gold is mine. Thy wives also and thy children. Really? Even the goodliest are mine. He says, I want it all. I'm not happy with just gold and silver. Y'all might not have much. I'm taking the women and the children. I got some fields and I got some stoves that need some workers on them. That's right. Verse 4. And the king of Israel answered and said, My lord, O king, according to thy saying, I am thine, and all that I have. What a sissy. What a king. Now, if it had just been silver and gold they were talking about, you could say, okay, discretion's the better part of valor. He's talking about his wives and his children. And he says, yeah, they're yours. Just come get it anytime you want. What a sissy. Verse 5. And the messengers came again and said, there's something that happens. When I was learning to sell cars on the dealership lot, the first car that I sold, I didn't sell. Somebody else did it, and I was observing and learning. And of course, it was my customer. I just brought them to him. He said, watch this. He said, we're going to make a lot of money on this deal. He said, watch this. If they don't suck their breath in, if they don't go, when we give them the price, then we charge them the wrong amount. He said, you never want to leave money on the table. If they're okay with the price, you didn't charge enough. That's exactly what goes on here. Benhadad says this. He was okay with me just telling him, I'm going to come down there and take the goodies. I need to inflict pain. Verse 5. And the messengers came again and said, Thus speaketh Benhadad, saying, Although I have sent unto thee, saying, Thou shalt deliver me thy silver and thy gold and thy wives and thy children, yet I will send my servants unto thee tomorrow about this time, and they shall search thine house and the house of thy servants, and it shall be that whatsoever is pleasant in thine eyes, not what I want or what I need or what I like, but in your eyes, they shall put in their hand and take it away. So he says, I'm going to do an inspection tomorrow. The servants are going to come in and they're going to say, how about that vase? And they're going to watch your eye and see if it's something that you cherished. We don't really need it, and I may not even want it. But if it looked like something you had your heart set on, I'm taking it. Whew. Be a good idea to stay away from a Benhadad. He's greedy of gain, not of need, not of even want, just an accumulation of junk. Look at verse 13, 1 Kings 20:13. And behold, there came a prophet unto Ahab, king of Israel, saying, Thus saith the Lord, Hast thou seen all this great multitude? Behold, I will deliver it into thy hand this day, and thou shalt know that I am the Lord. Now, God doesn't take this greed thing sitting down. If you're going to be greedy or you're facing somebody who is greedy, God will get involved. This is Ahab. He was a wimp. We just saw that. He was a sissy. His wife was more of a man than he was. Really, when Nabal won't give him his vineyard, he's sitting over there, turns his head to the wall and starts pouting and crying, and his wife walks in there and says, Aren't you the king? Well, just give me the keys and I'll run down there and get it for you.
I'll get it done.
Yeah, I got this. You just get some extra tissues. And that's what happened. But here, God steps in because somebody's being greedy. So we don't need to become God's enemy. Don't be greedy of gain. Just because somebody's got something don't mean you need to get it. America has bred covetousness by that. We never knew we needed, when we got married, we didn't have cell phones. We never knew we needed a cell phone.
I didn't even know they existed.
Yeah, what is that? I mean, I was living in the lap of luxury when we got married. I had a computer, and it had Windows 98 on it, buddy. I was uptown. High tech. And we never imagined we would need all these devices. Nowadays, you talk to a kid, buddy, he thinks that he's being persecuted, behind the Iron Curtain if he doesn't have a smartphone.
No, it's got to be an iPhone now.
Yeah, iPhone, yeah. So it's that's that greed that just gets in. You can live without it. When we got married, we didn't have phone service. There's a lot of things you can do without. You don't have to have all this junk. Start living within what God allows you to have, rather than being greedy of gain. Yeah, somebody else has got it, and yeah, it's nice. That's great. God, let them have it. Or maybe their father, the devil, is tricking them with it. It's a lure, and he's got a hook behind it. I don't need it. Joshua chapter 7. Joshua 7, verse 24. This is a wild story. Everybody knows the story, but I enjoy the story, so we're going to read it. And Joshua and all Israel took him. The him here is Achan. Took Achan, the son of Zerah. Anyway, I always fight with these names. And the silver and the garment and the wedge of gold, and his sons and his daughters and his oxen and his asses and his sheep and his tent and all that he had. Wait a minute. You know what happens here? They're coming through there. They just knocked down Jericho. The walls fell. They go, he says, look, don't take any of this junk. It's just junk. There will be a time God lets us have some junk, but right now He said no junk. You don't need it. Sometimes in your life it'll be the same way. God will say there's no extra junk for you today. There will be a time I give you junk, I'll dump it out. But when I say no, there's a reason behind it, don't take it. That's good enough. He does it anyway. He takes him some silver and some gold and some clothes. Not that he's going to get to use it in Israel because everybody's going to recognize it. But he took it anyway. But do you see what was taken from him? Everything. Even the stuff that was not forbidden. His family. All of his tent. We just read the list. His oxen, his sheep, everything he had was taken. Just because he took something he didn't need and couldn't really use. Greedy of gain. It killed him. Him and his whole house were put to death. 2 Kings 5. 2 Kings 5 verse 27. We'll find somebody else who's greedy. They got the Benhadad syndrome. Yes, this is, who's this guy? Yeah, but it's Gehazi. Gehazi is the servant of Elisha, the second one around. And he's healed this guy of leprosy. And rather than take a reward for it, he says, I don't want your money. This is not about me setting up a healing line. You know, you'll be sending me people nonstop. This is not done for money. You know, I don't do this for a career. I do what God tells me when he says to do it. But his servant said, wait a minute. I do need some money. Elisha didn't ask me if I wanted any money. So I'll cook me up a plan and I'll get me some of that stuff. Here it is, verse 27. The leprosy therefore of Naaman shall cleave unto thee, and unto thy seed forever. And he went out from his presence a leper, as white as snow. He got him some money. He got 2 changes of clothes and all this other stuff he wanted. However, he didn't realize he's going to get something else too. He got the leprosy. He was greedy of something that he was not supposed to have. Now, he probably, in his mind, had a good reason for it. And we, many times in our mind, have a good reason for the things we think we want. And a lot of times we put the N word on it. We need. If we really need it, are you telling me that God can't take care of it? He said he'll supply all your need. Either God didn't get the memo it was a need, or maybe you're lying about it being a need. Now I'm being harsh, but that's something that we all have to go through. Proverbs 15:27. Proverbs 15:27. I've never heard anybody claim this as their life verse. Proverbs 15:27. He that is greedy of gain troubleth his own house, but he that hateth gifts shall live. You'd be pretty hardcore if you claim that as your life verse, but it sure should be done, shouldn't it? Maybe we got too much of this welfare mentality in us just naturally. Right. And he says right here, you'll get into trouble that way. You start looking at bribes and just the lust of gain. That'll get you in trouble. If you're just not so desirous of junk, then you'll have a better life. And we will. Not just America, this is worldwide. People have always craved the biggest and the best. Haven't we all? Sure. And it's very clearly seen in the housing market. I got to have a bigger house. I don't need it. You know, the kids have all moved out and there's just 2 of us, but we need a bigger house. Okay? We need a bigger and better. And you know what? It doesn't satisfy. Greed never is satisfied. They get a bigger and better, and you know what they say? Now we need an RV so we can get away from this big and better. They get the big and better RV. You know what? That doesn't satisfy. You know what they're doing now? They're looking for satisfaction. You know what they're doing now? They're going back to small. I need a tiny house. You know, they're spending as much money on these little tiny houses as they have on big houses. I mean, who's the dummy in that formula? It's greed. Greed. You're looking for satisfaction. It's not found in the gain of things. It's found in obedience to God. Jeremiah chapter 17. Jeremiah 17:11. Jeremiah 17:11. I say this. I want everybody in here to be rich, if God wants you to be rich. God does want certain people to be rich. He does. And he dumps it out. You can see them in life. You'll find them. It doesn't matter what they do. They can sell water bottles. I mean, they just fill that up from the tap. And they make millions on that. If I tried that, I would go broke. I'm not predestined to be a rich man. Some people are. If they get it the way that it's supposed to be done, then God's approving of it. Here he is, Jeremiah 17:11. As the partridge sitteth on eggs, and hatcheth them not, so he that getteth riches, and not by right, shall leave them in the midst of his days, and at his end shall be a fool. If you're so desirous of gain, just junk, guess what? Your junk's going to leave, you're going to leave, and everybody's going to look and recognize you as the fool. That's good Bible right there. And if we could learn to force our brain to accept it, we would do well. 1 Timothy 5. 1 Timothy 5, verse 6. 1 Timothy 5, 6. But she that liveth in pleasure is dead while she liveth. Now, isn't that just a whole sentence full of contradictions? She's alive, but she's dead while she's alive. She's living in pleasure and for pleasure and thinks that's what life's all about. But it's dead because it doesn't satisfy. That won't satisfy you. Benhadad wasn't satisfied when he got the gold from the south. His son wasn't satisfied when he was going to get the gold, the wives, and the children from the north. Let's go to the next level. I want to see you in pain. That's where that goes. Sadistic. Look at Titus chapter 1. Titus 1, verse 11. Now, I'm going to step out of the physical, everyday, practical realm, and we're going into the spiritual realm. Because this very same thing happens on a building that'll be called a church. On a man who calls himself a priest or a prophet, an elder, all those big titles. The same thing can happen. It becomes a business. Titus 1, verse 11. Whose mouths must be stopped, who subvert whole houses, teaching things which they ought not. And here's the reason: for filthy lucre's sake. Money. It's all about the dollar bill. You've seen, I'm sure you've seen them, the great big mansions that all of these televangelists live in, and they're begging you for money to help some mission somewhere, but yet they've got it. The electric bill on those places would be more than we pay in a year for our house. It's crazy. Somebody's after filthy lucre. No need. What's the need there? Now he says there, don't be surprised when it shows up in places you thought it wouldn't. Sure, in a church. In people claiming to teach you the Word of God. Is there a motive behind it that says money? If there's a motive behind it that says money, it's the same as Benhadad. Benhadad is never satisfied when you give him $1. He's got to come in and take your children. He's not satisfied when he gets the children. He wants the wives. He's not satisfied when he gets that either. He wants to see you hurt. James chapter 5, verse 5. He says, "Ye have lived in pleasure on the earth and been wanton." That is, you lived in pleasure. But if ever that a verse applied to America, that one does. We live in pleasure. Compare our life and our day-to-day operations with most any other country, and they think we are rich. All of us, even the poorest among us, is rich compared to most countries.
We had just seen a program about a guy in India that harvested one harvest of honey in a Bengal saturated mangrove.
Mm-hmm.
$60 would take care of his family for the rest of the year.
Mm.
But he had to go and hang out with some Bengal tigers and run off some killer bees and cost
Yeah.
$60 for the whole year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You only had to, it was crazy.
Yeah. We live in pleasure on this earth. We do. Just ask some other people if you don't have enough vision to see it yourself. He says, "and been wanton." That's how you know it applies to you, because you don't think you're in pleasure. You think, I want this. If I just had that, I need this. Wait a minute. We don't. We got a roof. We got food. We've all got clothes on tonight. Okay. He says, these people who are living in pleasure and think they still have wants. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. He said, you're out there feasting, not realizing it's your last day on earth. What good did that do you? I mean, that's a real waste, to spend your last days just gorging yourself because you know tomorrow you're going to die. I mean, that takes some real planning. Okay, that's Benhadad number 2. We'll see Benhadad number 3 and we'll be done. This one I call the ease of oppression. He was an oppressor. Now, of all the Benhadads, he was the weakest. And really, an oppressor is truly weak. They put somebody down in order to make themselves feel good. That's how they have such a bad, low esteem of themselves that the only way they can pat themselves on the back is to make fun of you, or to hurt you, or put you down, or brag about how great they are. That's how they get their back scratched. Here he is. 2 Kings 13. Oppression is always hateful to God, even when God is using it to chastise his own people. And he does. And he did, and we've got plenty of examples of it. God sees it, God notes it, and God lays it up, because one day he's going to restore what's owed. 2 Kings 13, verse 4. And Jehoahaz sought the Lord, and the Lord hearkened unto him, for he saw the oppression of Israel, because the king of Syria oppressed them. Okay, so they're being oppressed. God saw it, and God did not like that. Chapter 13, verse 7. Here's this king. Here's how he oppressed them. Neither did he leave of the people to Jehoahaz, but 50 horsemen, and 10 chariots, and 10,000 footmen. For the king of Syria had destroyed them, and had made them like the dust by threshing. Now, isn't that what we read in Amos chapter 1? Because they threshed Gilead? That's right. He's an oppressor. God took that very serious. He didn't mention greed. He didn't mention the people becoming a buddy of rebels. We can read the stories and find that's true. But he sure did single out the oppression. He says in Exodus 3, verse 7. Exodus 3:7. And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people which are in Egypt. God's always got his eye on his people. Whether you're acting right or not, he's still watching. You're special to him. He says, and have heard their cry by reason of their taskmasters. Taskmasters. For I know their sorrow. If you're oppressed, God's taking note. And God's going to take care of business too. Now, Benhadad's going to pay for it. The whole kingdom's going to pay for it. They're going to be wiped off the face of this earth. Now, we can take a lesson from that. Don't be an oppressor. That's going to be a temptation. Otherwise, it wouldn't be in here. Think about it. It's going to be a temptation. You're going to be in a position at some point in life where you can oppress someone else. I don't know how that applies to you. Find a way that applies, because then it'll be beneficial. For instance, if you're always more righteous than your neighbor, okay, tell him the right. That's true. You should do that. You should tell him right and wrong. But then don't beat him up as though you're righteous. Our righteousness is as filthy rags. Amen. Now, the only righteousness we have is what comes through us from God. So you may be doing what is right biblically. That's good, and you should. Your neighbor may not, and most of the time they won't, because welcome to America. You should tell them. That's true. But then don't walk around as though you've achieved the supremacy of the world because you do this or that. Okay, you just drop down to the low level. You've become an oppressor. And God notes oppression. He doesn't like it. Isaiah chapter 10, verse 5. Here's the way God handled Israel. Israel had gotten away from him, and he decided, I'm going to correct Israel. I've got some special armies that I can call on that'll come in and take care of business. Isaiah 10, verse 5. O Assyrian, the rod of mine anger, and staff in my and the staff in their hand is my indignation. He said, this army up here, buddy, they are vicious. They're savages. And I, God, can pull them out just like a spanking switch and use them anytime I want, and I want to right now. And that's what he's going to do with Israel. Verse 6, I will send him against an hypocritical nation, and against a people of my wrath will I give him a charge, to take the spoil, and to take the prey, and to tread them down like the mire of the streets. And they did. Remember, they threshed them. They threshed Gilead. Verse 7, he says, I know that my spanking stick is suddenly going to get the big head and think it's a taskmaster, and it decided to do this, and no, the only reason it's able to do that is because God said, I want you to. But the second the spanking stick starts thinking, I'm the one who controls the oppression, God turns on the oppressor. Howbeit, he meaneth not so, neither doth his heart think so, but it is in his heart to destroy and to cut off nations, not a few. For he saith, are not my princes altogether kings? Is not Calno as Carchemish? Is not Hamath as Arpad? Is not Samaria as Damascus? No, they're not the same. Samaria was God's land. That's his property. Big difference between that and Damascus. Look at it in verse 10. As my hand hath found the kingdoms of the idols, and whose graven images did excel them of Jerusalem and Samaria. Okay, so Assyria comes in there and says, look, you got good stuff in here, but it ain't any better than the other good stuff I stole from your neighbor next to you, and you're going to be just like them, and I'm going to take all of you away, I'm going to dump you in different countries, and I'm the big cheese here. They had a mission, but they didn't stop at their mission. They became an oppressor. God's going to take care of it. Verse 12. Wherefore it shall come to pass that when the Lord hath performed his whole work upon Mount Zion and on Jerusalem, I will punish the fruit of the stout heart of the king of Assyria, and the glory of his high looks. So God's going to finish off the oppressor. Count on it. Even if God had to use this nation to oppress a man in order to get him right with God, or to get him to look to God. And that's what he did. He said, I took my children, and I let Babylon come in. I let the Assyrians come in. I let Pharaoh come up there. And it was all for a purpose, so they would turn to me. As soon as they do that, I'll turn and destroy their enemies. Now, we're the children of God. Benhadad, the name means son of the sun. He's not the son of the sun. He's the darkness of darkness. But we truly are. We are given new birth by Jesus Christ. Therefore, as a Christian, you are the son of the sun. And we had better be careful that we don't become Benhadad. That's what that name means, son of the sun. However, we can do it the right way because he's given us the instructions. All right, that's 3 Benhadads, and I didn't do Haziel.